It was a dark and stormy night in the middle of nowhere, the kind of night that would have even the most seasoned trucker on edge. I had been driving for hours, my eyelids growing heavy as I navigated the winding back roads of this God-forsaken stretch of highway. The rain pounded relentlessly against the windshield, obscuring my vision and making it feel like I was operating in a thick fog. I probably should have pulled over hours ago, but my delivery deadline was fast approaching and I was determined to push through. The client was counting on me and I couldn't afford to let them down. So I soldiered on, gripping the steering wheel tightly as my truck rumbled along. As I rounded a particularly sharp bend, something in the distance caught my eye. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a flickering shadow or a stray animal darting across the road. But as I drew closer, my blood ran cold. There, on the side of the highway, was the unmistakable silhouette of a person. I slowed the truck down, heart pounding in my chest. Should I stop? My gut instinct was to just keep driving. This was the middle of nowhere, and you never knew what kind of trouble you might be getting yourself into. But something compelled me to pull over. Maybe it was the humanitarian in me, or maybe I was just too damn curious for my own good. As I brought the truck to a stop, I peered out into the darkness, straining to make out any details. The figure was hunched over, seemingly clutching their side. I could hear the faint sound of sobbing over the roar of the engine. Without thinking, I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door, stepping out into the torrential downpour. "Hello? Are you all right?" I called out, my voice barely audible above the storm. The figure stirred and slowly lifted their head. That's when I saw it. A young woman, her face streaked with tears and dirt, a deep gash across her forehead. "Oh my God," I breathed, rushing over to her side. "What happened? Are you hurt?" She looked up at me, eyes wild with fear. "Please, you have to help me," she stammered. "My car, it went off the road. I think my leg is broken." I quickly knelt down beside her, shining the flashlight over her body. Sure enough, her left leg was bent at an unnatural angle, the bone clearly protruding through the skin. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. Okay, just try to stay calm," I said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I'm going to call for help, all right?" I pulled out my phone, but to my dismay, there was no signal. Of course, in the middle of nowhere, in the pouring rain, when I needed it most. I cursed under my breath, frantically looking around for any sign of civilization. "There has to be a town or something nearby," I said, more to myself than to her. I'll go find help. Just hang on, okay?" She reached out and grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong despite her obvious pain. "No, please, don't leave me here." Her voice was laced with pure terror. I think there's something out there." I hesitated, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. "What do you mean?" "I heard it, in the woods. Something was watching me," she whispered, her eyes darting around nervously. "Please, you have to stay with me. I'm so scared." I felt a chill run down my spine. The woods surrounding us seemed to loom ominously, the trees swaying in the wind like gnarled skeletal hands. For a moment, I swore I saw a shadowy figure dart between the trunks, but I blinked and it was gone. All right, I'll stay," I conceded, my mind racing. "Just try to stay calm, okay? I'm not going anywhere." I quickly retrieved a blanket from the truck and wrapped it around the woman's shivering form, doing my best to splint her leg with some spare materials. As I worked, I couldn't shake the sense that we were being watched. I kept glancing nervously into the darkness, half expecting some unspeakable horror to come lurching out of the woods. Time seemed to crawl by as we sat there in tense silence, the only sounds the howling wind and the woman's ragged breathing. Every once in a while she would let out a whimper of pain, gripping my arm tightly. And every time, I would scan the tree line, my heart pounding in my chest. What? What if no one comes? She suddenly whispered, her voice trembling. What if we're stuck out here all night? I swallowed hard, not wanting to voice the very same fears that had been gnawing at me. Don't worry, help is on the way, I lied, trying to sound reassuring. Just hang in there, okay? She nodded weakly, closing her eyes. I could see the exhaustion etched on her face, and I knew she was rapidly slipping into shock. I had to do something, but what? There was no way I could carry her back to the truck, and even if I could, I had no idea where the nearest town or hospital was. As I sat there, helplessly watching the woman's condition deteriorate, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. The woods surrounding us seemed to press in, the shadows deepening and the eerie silence becoming deafening. And then I heard it. A faint rustling in the distance, followed by the snap of a branch. My head snapped up, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. There was no response, only the unsettling silence. The woman whimpered, clutching my arm tighter. I told you there was something out there," she whispered, her eyes wide with terror. I felt a chill run down my spine as I strained to peer into the blackness. The trees seemed to loom over us, their branches twisting and writhing like the grasping limbs of some ancient, malevolent creature. And then I saw it, a flash of movement, a glimpse of something dark and inhuman darting between the trunks. Oh, God. I breathed, my heart pounding in my chest. We need to get out of here, now. I quickly scooped up the woman, ignoring her cries of pain, and made a break for the truck. But as I ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being followed, that something was watching our every move. I could hear the branches snapping, the leaves rustling, and the unmistakable sound of heavy, labored breathing just behind us. I fumbled with the truck door, my hands shaking, and managed to get the woman inside. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my eyes frantically scanning the darkness. There was nothing there, but the sense of being watched was overwhelming. I jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine, the truck rumbling to life. As I put it in gear and started to pull away, I couldn't help but glance back, half expecting to see some horrific creature lurching towards us. But there was nothing, just the endless expanse of darkness, swallowing us whole. We drove in tense silence for what felt like an eternity, the woman's labored breathing the only sound in the cab. I kept my eyes glued to the road, my heart pounding in my chest as we put as much distance as possible between us and that God-forsaken stretch of highway. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, we spotted the faint glow of a town in the distance. I let out a shaky breath, relief washing over me. We were going to be okay, or so I thought. As we approached the town, I noticed something strange. There were no lights, no signs of life. The streets were eerily deserted, with only the faint glow of street lamps illuminating the desolate scene. "What's going on?" the woman whispered, her voice barely audible. I shook my head, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. "I don't know, but I don't like it." I slowly rolled the truck through the abandoned streets, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my gut. And then I saw it, a body lying in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding to a stop. I stared in horror at the lifeless form, my mind racing. What What the hell had happened here? Suddenly, a movement in the shadows caught my eye. I whipped my head around just in time to see a figure dart across the street, disappearing into the darkness. "Did you see that?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The woman nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to get out of here, now." I didn't need to be told twice. I threw the truck into reverse and floored it, the tires screeching as we peeled out of the abandoned town. As we sped away, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. That whatever had taken over that town was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victims. To this day, I don't know what happened in that town, what dark forces had consumed it. All I know is that I'll never forget the sheer terror I felt, the overwhelming sense of dread that gripped me as we fled that place. It's a memory that haunts me, a nightmare that refuses to let me go. I've driven a lot of miles in my time, seen a lot of strange things. But that night, on that dark and stormy highway, will forever be seared into my memory as the single most terrifying experience of my life. Thank you for watching. If you found these stories gripping, don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling content. For another hair-raising tale, check out our suggested video. And if you're hungry for more eerie encounters, dive into our playlist featuring similar chilling narratives.